there's an interesting story that I noticed yesterday, actually, which is that the European Union Court, has ruled that headscarves, the hijab, can be banned at work under certain conditions. And I know that this is a topic that's reared its head at times in this country as well. And I was just keen to get a bit more detail on this and a bit more info on it, really, and just discuss whether or not we think there's something that should be brought in over here, and indeed, if you do, why that is. And so, Khadija, thank you very much for joining us. Great to have you on board. I understand that our YouTube viewers as well will be able to see you this morning, which is good stuff. How are you, first and foremost?
Thank you so much, Pat, for having me. I'm fine, thank you.
Just to run through this now, and I'm reading from this now. Companies in the EU may ban Muslim employees from wearing a headscarf under certain conditions. A top European court has ruled. It came after two Muslim ladies brought a case in a court in Germany. Obviously, the hijab being the traditional headscarf that's worn around the head and shoulders. It's been causing controversy in Europe for years. What's your overall take on this ruling, the fact that the hijab now can be banned by employers?
Apart from personal opinion on this issue of banning hijab, or whether it is a matter of a choice for women or not, we need to look at what the ruling is all about. The ruling is, the ruling reaffirms 2017 ruling that states prohibition on religious and political symbols can be justified in certain circumstances by an employer's desire to pursue a policy of political, philosophical, and religious neutrality with regards to its customers and users. But for that, the employers need to show a genuine need for the ban. If the ruling is about political and religious neutrality, which impacts all people, irrespective of their gender, and not directed towards a specific religious group, in my opinion, it's highly disingenuous to call it a hijab ban or policing Muslim women's dress or an attack on religious freedoms. We can disagree with the ruling without being dishonest. We don't need to distort facts just to turn it to our advantage. And the reaction of the mainstream media has been really disappointing. It's just like clickbait sensationalism. This trend to promote a divisive narrative that may provoke a reaction among people from a community is really problematic.
So one of the issues that I may have with a ruling like this is that if you, let's just say, all right, so one of the elements of it, as you pointed out, is that potentially now employers could say you can't wear the hijab, you can't wear the headscarf. Can they then also say, if I wore a crucifix around my neck, for example, would that be banned as some kind of, am I there overtly expressing some kind of, religious idolatry, as it were, that would now be banned? Because, I have a bit of an issue with that. What about if Jewish people want to wear the kippah on their heads? Are we not allowed this as well? Is that where we're going? Because people, look, whether or not people agree with, I think we're going to come on to maybe as well, some perhaps of the messaging behind or intention behind some of the hijab or the burqa. But, people need to be free to be able to express their religion, don't they?
We need to understand that secular society, that this manifestation of a religious belief is not absolute in secular society. Religious beliefs which are inherently discriminatory towards women and minorities cannot be absolute in these societies.
So is that where you are? Sorry to interrupt. Just quickly, is that where you are then with this in terms of, in your view, the hijab is discriminatory against women?
Of course, it's a tool to oppress women. I know that some privileged Muslim women who are born and raised here in pre-Western societies, they are attempting to change the perception about hijab or this so-called modesty culture, by normalizing the usage of hijab or niqab. But it doesn't change the context in which certain garments were invented to oppress women, as a tool to oppress women. And I think it's really, really disappointing that ultra-conservative lot and regressive left, they choose to fight for the protection of the same attire that is used as a tool to oppress women and undermine struggle women made across the Muslim world.
It's something I've raised a couple of times on this show, and I'm glad that we maybe get the opportunity to do it again, because I've always been absolutely astounded by the attitude of the left, especially the left, in this country when it comes to things like they want to promote, of course, LGBTQ plus rights. They also want to promote as well, things like women's rights, for example. And then, look, there is a plain matter of fact that due to maybe the more conservative elements, and by the way, there's homophobia and sexism everywhere. I'm not for a single second just digging out one sector of society here, but there are elements of your more conservative, especially Islamic community in this country, where they don't tend to match up very well with things like gay rights or women's rights all the time. And so the left seems to be very quiet on that, doesn't it?
This trait of taking front row in supporting women's rights and freedom of speech for the rest of the society and turning a blind eye to the growing intolerance towards women of Muslim heritage is really disgraceful, I would say. It discourages dissent within Muslim communities, and I call it soft bigotry of low expectation, that they want one standard for themselves and another standard for the minority women, and that is really disingenuous and unfair, in my opinion. And this should not be like this, because when you're talking about equality, you are talking about justice and the same rights for everyone in the society, then why you are alienating one group by saying that, okay, this is their culture and they can just, cope with this, with their circumstances. And all we need to do is just to turn a blind eye and call it multiculturalism, or just pretend like this is a diverse society in which we tolerate the intolerance towards women.
Do you think in this country, if there was a similar ruling over here, that it would be well received? I can imagine that there might be quite a lot of issues and maybe indeed protests about a similar thing, like banning or allowing employers to stop employees wearing the hijab.
I think, first of all, we need to stop making this assumption that it's all about hijab. It's not about hijab. Every time we hear that there is a discussion about face covering or about, banning religious symbol, political symbol, philosophical symbols at workplace, it turns to be all about hijab. This is really disingenuous interpretation, in my opinion. It's all when something has been decided for the rest of the society, and you're a part of that society, and the reasoning behind that decision is to promote equality and justice for everyone and to treat people under the same law. I think we need to understand this thing, that this is not discriminatory. And this claim that this ruling will alienate or marginalize or push Muslim women out of public life is false. Because Muslim women coming from ultra-conservative communities, they are already alienated, not by the government, not by the state, not by the ruling, but by their own men and their restrictive rules.
Interesting stuff, Khadija, and I really appreciate you making the time for us. Thank you very much for coming on board. Khadija Khan, their journalist and commentator,